Hello everybody, it's Stephen and Walter here for another episode of So Chatty, episode number 148 for July the 11th, 2024. So today we're going to be talking about a variety of things, but our main focus is going to be on buttonholes. And Walter's going to show you how he creates a buttonhole on our shirts. But before we get to that, I want to show you what I've been working on. And if you saw Idiot Quilter this week, you've already seen this. So I just have to find it here. Okay, where'd it go? Bloody hell. Anyways, it's the bag that I made. And okay, I had the picture here. There it is. I found it. Okay, there it is. It's my gnome bag. And this didn't start out to be a bag. It started off to be a quilt. But the problem was that I made a little boo-boo with Lucy. It was Lucy's fault. I'm going to blame it on her. When I was quilting this, and I didn't like how that worked. I mean, it wasn't that noticeable, but I knew it was there. And this was going to be a charity quilt for Project Linus. And I don't believe in giving quilts to charity that are second rate. I believe that you should put as much thought and effort into a quilt you're going to donate to a charity as you do for something that you're going to gift to a family member or a friend. Because why should people who are kind of down and out, maybe not as lucky as we are, why should they get seconds? So that has caused quite a stir on our channel when I said that on Tuesday, and we'll come back to that later on. But in the meantime, didn't want to waste it, and actually I have enough of this fabric that I can make probably a couple of more bags out of it if I so desire. And it's got my little signature Elfie guy, Gnomey guy on it. And Walter liked my bag, so high praise. He said it was fine. Good to know. Anyways, yeah. I'm happy with it. I think it's a nice
and colorful.
I think it's a nice bag, and it's lined, and I used some Deco Bond in it as well, so that's why it stands up on its own. I like a good stiff bag, and I talked all about this anyways on the Idiot Quilter. If you missed it, you can go back to Idiot Quilter this week to find out more about this bag. So that's what I've been up to this week. I've been up to working on one of the secret projects that I'm working on. Actually, two secret projects. And they're both coming along, and I can't share those with you. Sorry. I know I keep telling you that. Well, building up anticipation here. Okay. So, Walter's still working on my next shirt. And what's the progress on that?
No progress today.
No. Or yesterday.
Yeah, I get to
or
it
the day
tomorrow.
before. But anyways, it'll be lovely when it's done. Hopefully the warm weather will still be here and I'll be able to wear it at that point. So, okay, so what's coming up? Sewing with Stephanie and Stephen on Wednesdays, as always, links in the show notes. This Saturday, special event. It is a pop-up sew day. I've already sent out the announcement about that twice. Sent one out on Monday to everybody on the mailing list. And I sent one out this morning, Friday, as well. As a reminder, we start at 8 a.m. Eastern Time, run till 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and I'm calling this one, which makes it special, it's my birthday bash pop-up sew day, because my birthday's the next day on Sunday. And as such, and I've already said this before too, I'm giving out prizes, Amazon gift certificates. I think I have a method figured out for doing a random draw on Zoom. I really wish Zoom would create a random name picker from people that are in a Zoom meeting. I'm not the only one that's put that request into them. There's been all kinds of requests since as early as 2020. People have been asking for it, and it doesn't look like Zoom is too interested in doing anything with that yet. They just, pay lip service to the idea. There's a few sites that have supposedly third-party programs that work in such and such a way with Zoom, but a couple I went to don't exist anymore, so obviously those didn't catch on. And there is one I'm going to try tomorrow. It's basically an attendance taker kind of a thing, but it's got some features in it that would allow me to copy and paste the names of the people in the Zoom into the random name generator, and so we'll see how that works. If worst case scenario comes, I will just count. I will pick a random number and I'll just count across the screen like Hollywood squares, all the squares, and the person's square that matches that number is the person that wins a prize. So that's how it's going to work tomorrow with it all. And as I said, it's going to be Amazon gift certificates. Don't get excited. They're not hundreds of dollars, not even close. Uh, let's just think of it as a token gift. And there is one little trick. And that trick is you must be physically in the Zoom meeting with your camera on so we can see you when I draw. And if you're not, if your camera's on but you're not in the shot, no prize for you. Nope. Move on to another name for that. Yes, I know I'm a bastard. So be it. But I will give you a 5-minute countdown before I do one of the draws, just in case you decided you needed to run to the potty or something like that, or get a snack or whatever, so that you don't miss it. So that's tomorrow, July the 13th, 2024. And as I said, the link for it is in the show notes for this today. It's in all the show notes for the Idiot Quilt, for my vlog, for the Idiot Quilter. So it's there, and those of you on the mailing list already got it. So it should be a lot of fun. Have no idea what the weather's like tomorrow, whether we're going to have rain or sun is going to shine, or it's going to burn us all up, whatever. But whatever, it's going to be a perfect day to sew and to socialize. Okay, so speaking of other social things, the social review occurred this past Wednesday. You can catch the replay on Russ's channel, Quilt Meets World. That's where Stephanie Stitches, Shannon of Slay Arts, Russ of Quilt Meets World, and Walter and I, we all got together. And the topic we had this week was our love-hate relationship with sewing machines. So we talked about what we have for machines, why we have those machines, what we like about those machines, and even horror stories about our machines. And we talked about what to look for when you buy a machine and general maintenance and things like that. So it's a good discussion, especially if you're in the market for a brand new machine. You might glean some helpful information. So as I said, you will find that on Russ's channel, Quilt Meets World, the replay for that. Okay, so another thing that we discovered, we are working on our series for the serger and cover stitch machine. I'm hoping that next week's So Chatty will get out the first installment of that. It depends. I have to get Walter motivated for it. We were supposed to go over the plans with me the other day, but you got busy doing other things, and so that never happened. But it will. And one of the things while I was exploring this topic, actually it's a video Walter found, and I am putting the link for this video in the show notes below because this is a question a lot of people have. How do you know that you are using the right size needle for the thread that you are using? And, usually speaking, the lower the number on a needle, the bigger the hole, right?
No.
Nope, the other way around. Okay, you see, this gets confusing. The higher the number, the bigger the hole. But on thread, the lower the number, the thicker the thread.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where everything gets really confusing. And if you're having problems with your thread shredding, then you probably have got the wrong needle size when you're using that.
Your thread could shred if you've got your needle size is too big, and it can shred if it's too small.
Yeah. So that's the first thing you should probably look at. Well, actually, the second thing. The first thing you should look at is, did you thread your machine correctly? Double check that. And then if it's still shredding, check your needle size and, go to a size smaller or one size bigger with that thread and try it then. But there's another way to tell, and this I thought was kind of cool. And this particular video, which you can click on, as I said, it's in the show notes, and check it out for yourself. But essentially what you do is you take your needle out of your sewing machine, you thread it with a long piece of thread, and you hold the thread taut. And if your needle slides really easily, then it's probably you're using a needle that has a too big a hole. If it doesn't slide at all, it's the opposite. You're using a needle hole that is too small for your thread. And then what they do is they pull it and they flip it around, make the needle spin. do so far from your face. And if it goes around evenly, it's not floppy, then it's probably the right size thread. But you need to see the video to understand exactly what I'm talking about. It's really kind of a neat way to
Yeah, and it's
check it.
a needle manufacturer
Yeah,
that has put this out.
yeah. So check that video out. And as I said, the link for it is in the show notes below. Okay, so I think that's all the announcements. We have several things coming up that will interfere with the flow of our videos for 1 week. Not next week, but the week after. We're off to Berlin, Ohio. Not Berlin, Germany. Berlin, Ohio. Amish country, and we're doing a little bit of shopping, sightseeing, taking a little mini vacation kind of a thing. And then, of course, we're going to meet up with Stephanie, who is in that area as well, in Ohio, and spend some time with her. So there will be videos that week. That's not next week, it's the week after. But they won't be on the regular schedule. And there may be some lives, impromptu lives. Don't know, because it's all going to depend on technology. But we'll talk a little bit more about that when we're getting ready to leave. Okay, so that takes us to today's topic. Walter is going to show you how he does a buttonhole. So that's what I'm going to insert in here for you right now.
We're about to enter a spot that you may have never been in before. I rarely go in here because this is the home of a rare beast. It's the go away beast, because that's why if I step over the threshold, and I'm being privileged today to be allowed to do so, it's where Walter hangs out. This is his sewing room. I'm going to isolate it to just his sewing machine, and I hope I don't step into anything or on anything. There could be dead bodies in this room. So here's Walter sitting in front of his desk, and Walter is going to show us today how to use the Janome 6700P to make a buttonhole. It has a little device that comes with it. Now he's going to explain all of that and show you some examples of what you can do with this. But this is the way Walter does it, and these are his settings. You might want to change the settings to suit your purposes. And I guess the best way to go about that is to practice. Don't get out the thing you've been working on for quite a while and decide now it's time to put the buttonholes in and do it on that if you're not comfortable with your buttonholer. And even if you are, do you do a sample piece before you use the buttonholer on your shirts?
Yeah, actually, before I do any buttonholes on my shirts, even though I've done them lots of times before, and I know what settings I like and everything like that, I always do a couple of sample buttonholes on a scrap piece of fabric first before I go and do a buttonhole. Because one of the problems with doing buttonholes is that if you make a mistake, or if the machine makes a mistake, then, which does happen on occasion, is that the buttonholes are basically satin stitches, and they're very difficult to unstitch.
Yep.
So you would rather not make any mistakes.
No. So what are we starting with here? Here's the 6700P.
Okay, right now the 6700P is set up for regular sewing.
So you just have your regular foot.
I have my regular foot in there, and I have it set to a standard mode and everything else for sewing. And so I've pulled out my buttonholer, and this is what my buttonholer looks like. It actually has two pieces. It has a back piece and a front piece, and this back piece is a stabilizer plate, and it's supposed to help you keep your fabric sandwiched and keep it steady for putting the buttonhole in. Now in the manual it does sort of say that you can use the buttonholer without that piece. I've never used it without the piece. I think it's a great piece that helps keep your fabric in the right position for a buttonholing, and I use it on the front of all my shirts. Okay, so now what it does is this buttonholer will, you put your button in of your choice, in which right now I've selected this button, which is a nice bright color, and it's a standard, what they call 18L button, which is I think about 11.5 millimeters in width, and this will go, I'm not sure how big it'll go, but you put your button in here, and it sizes your button to, or it sizes your buttonhole to whatever button you put in here.
So in other words, it adjusts according to the button size, so the hole is the right size.
Yeah.
For it.
And now it will take a fairly substantial button. These are standard shirt size buttons, but I have used the size of a jeans button in here with no problem. I'm sure you can get up a little higher than that as well.
So that's spring loaded, is it?
Yeah, I don't know what it is. Actually, I find this one is sort of, it's not a spring, actually. It's,
What's a set of notches?
Set of notches, right? So you put your button in. Now, if you want to increase or decrease the size of the hole, you can use this little twisty thing to do that. And in this particular case, with these buttons, I usually like the hole to be a little bit larger than what it chooses to sew. So I set mine up. Now, this is sort of a personal preference thing. Mm-hmm. So yeah, if you leave it in the middle, it's what the machine decides. And if you want your hole to be a little smaller, you twist this thing to make it a little smaller.
So you twist that little knob at the top.
Yeah, to make it either bigger.
Your hand in the way.
Sorry, either bigger or smaller. You just twist it to whatever you want, right? I like it a little bit larger.
Down, and then so it moves down and it moves up.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you make it to whatever you would like.
So this is why you try a test piece first, so you can get that setting exactly the way you want it. And then I suppose for the most part, you're probably doing the same size buttons for a lot of your projects, so you don't need to readjust it again.
Yeah, and on a men's shirt, I use an 18L button, which goes down the front of the shirt. And on the collar, I use a slightly smaller button, and it's a 14L button that you use, and those are standard shirt sizes. Now, depending on whether you're making a shirt or a blouse or something like that, it really depends on what buttons you need for that. But anyway, these are the ones that I use.
So basically what you're showing us today is the standard, the run-of-the-mill, everyday kind of thing.
Standard button that you would put down the front of your shirt.
So the settings and everything that we'll be using today are basically the settings for your most common buttons.
Right.
All right. So what do you do now? So you said you had the machine set up for regular sewing. I assume you're going to have to put that device on the machine somehow.
Yeah, I will. This is actually a foot. So if you see here, this is where a foot attaches, and you would attach this to the machine where your foot normally goes, right? Okay. And when you're sewing a button, there's a guide here to help you line up your fabric as to where the button's going to go.
Which you will show us.
Yeah, I will show you. In, let's say, the sample fabric that I have, I've drawn a line down the center of it, and I've put some notches in it.
Notches?
Or like
marks.
Marks.
Yeah.
Showing where I want my button to go.
So those two, that's where the actual button would be sewn.
Well, this is where the buttonhole would go. If you see some examples of buttonholes that I've done, see, this is the standard buttonhole. This is the buttonhole, the same buttonhole, but I've adjusted the settings to the way I prefer it to look, right? This is an alternative buttonhole. You can make different kinds. My machine will make up to 7 different kinds of buttonholes. Cheaper or less expensive machines may only have one standard buttonhole, or they may give you less choices. Okay.
So these first two that you showed us, they are pretty much the standard type, right? They're the ones that would be most commonly thought of for a buttonhole.
This is the one using default settings for this button, right? And this one is using the settings I prefer.
And the settings you prefer, did that make the hole a little bigger or a little smaller?
Well, what it does is it makes the satin stitch a little bit tighter on the side.
Okay.
And the buttonhole itself, the width of the stitches are a little skinnier, so they're not quite as pronounced a buttonhole. It's more of a, I think, more discreet buttonhole.
Okay, so that's discreet. Okay. So we've seen samples now. We've seen that you mark this. Just a question about these markings again that I don't understand. You have this mark here. You have this mark here. What's in between here? What's that represent? What
I've done here is normally, this is just random for me right now for a test, but normally down the front of a shirt, right? Shirts, men's shirts, the buttonholes are usually 3.5 inches apart, right? So if I was doing a shirt, I would probably make either a light line down the front, or I'd make a bunch of X's where I want the start of the buttonhole to be, right? So these are really just marks that show you where the start of the buttonhole would be.
Okay.
So if I sew a buttonhole here, I would try and start it here, around here. So my buttonhole would sew down here and back.
Okay, when you say start, so does it start to make the buttonhole from the bottom?
Yeah, it'll start when the machine sews the buttonhole. It will start from here at this end, and it will travel all the way down here, go across, and travel back.
Okay.
Okay, so that's...
So that mark that you've got it beside right now represents this part.
Right.
The bottom part.
So,
okay.
I mean, I did not measure it here that it's 3.5 inches apart, but I've just done it for demonstration purposes. And you can put a line down the front to help you assist to lining it up so that it will sew on straight.
Okay.
Okay, so, and that's what you do when you put the fabric in here, in between the sandwich. You would line up your buttonhole to go over this spot here and try and get that.
Okay, so where that little window is, right here, right there, that's where the line is that you drew horizontally across that.
Right.
Okay.
So that's where I would like my buttonhole to go.
Okay.
Right? And
that's where your buttonhole to start.
And then it would travel down the line and trying to get the line straight in here so that your buttonhole doesn't go on crooked.
Okay. So that line that we're seeing up here in this top one, that's the right edge of the buttonhole.
No, technically that would be the center of the buttonhole.
Oh, so it's going to go around that all the way. So that's in the center. Okay, got it.
Okay. So now to set this machine up to do the buttonhole, I have to set it up so that it'll go to the buttonhole stitch, right? And in this machine, mode 1 is standard stitches. I have to go to mode 2 for this one. And this is all my decorative stitches, which is here, right? Mode 2 is all my decorative stitches. And part of my decorative stitches are buttonholes.
Okay.
On here, right? Yeah. So they start at 23. 25 is a memory setting, which I have never used, and I think that's if you do a manual buttonhole.
That's a 24.
24, yeah. 23 is a standard buttonhole. 24 is a memory buttonhole, which I think if you do a manual one, you can make it memorize where
your settings would always be set up.
Right.
Okay.
I've never done a manual buttonhole, so I don't know.
Yeah, memory buttonhole.
Manual buttonhole.
Oh, you've always used a... I see what you mean.
You make a manual buttonhole, you make one, the machine memorizes it, and then it sews it for you.
Okay.
Right. But anyway, and then you've got buttonhole. If you notice here, the number 23 buttonhole has square ends on it. The number 25 buttonhole is a rounded end and a square end. Number 26 is 2 rounded ends, right? Number 27 has this little hole in the bottom. These are usually used for jeans and for jean jackets. These kind of buttonholes, if you have a pair of jeans, you'll notice that they'll have these kind of buttonholes. And these are pretty much the same, except one will have a square bottom, another one will have sort of a rounded top, and then there's a third one that has a different pointed top.
Okay, but we're not going to deal with those today. We're dealing with the standard.
Yeah, the one that I use all the time for sewing a shirt is number 23.
Okay. So
I'm on mode 2, and on my machine it's digital, so I have to pick number 23 buttonhole. Okay, so it's 0, 2, 3. And if you know it, you see the buttonhole picture in there. It shows you the buttonhole, and it shows you the size setting, the default size settings.
Okay, and that's how close the satin stitches are going to be to each other.
Yeah, so if I show you a default number 23, the default one is this one.
Which one?
This one right here, where my finger is.
Okay.
Okay? This is a default one using the settings I like.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, but other than that, they're both the same. And it's using this button. So to set up the buttonhole for this button, I take this buttonhole, it doesn't have a button in it. So I put my button in here, right? And then I squeeze it down to hold the button tight.
Where it snaps, so it's
It's nice and tight.
Okay.
Okay. And I've already adjusted my settings here that I've decided. If you're doing a buttonhole for the first time, I'd suggest you leaving it at the default in the middle, and that's it. And now you need the second piece to go on the back. So you just put the second piece on, and then you attach it to the machine.
Okay. Now that second piece comes with the buttonholer.
Yes, it does.
And this buttonholer came with your sewing machine, right?
Right.
Now, that may not be the case in all machines, depending on the level of the machine that you bought, but you can buy them you can buy them as an accessory as well if yours didn't come with one.
I would think if the machines are capable of doing buttonholes, they will usually come with a machine.
Okay,
yeah.
fine. All right, so you got your button in the buttonholer.
Yeah, so then I have to take off my standard foot, which I did. There's a little button here, and my standard foot pops off, right? And then I slide this one in underneath, and where the foot attachment is here, and I just attach it just like standard foot would, and until it clicks.
Okay.
So it's now attached.
All right.
Okay, and the machine's set to do a buttonhole, but there's one more piece that has to be done. And the machine there's a special stop here inside the buttonholer to keep the buttonhole from going too far, because it needs to be told when to stop to get to the end of the button. Okay, and to do that, there's a little piece in this machine that slides down.
Okay.
In front of it, right? And that is strictly for your buttonholer to stop when thing.
Okay.
Now, if you forget to put that down, which I sometimes do, it's easy to forget. It's a step, and your machine will automatically stop before it gets to the end and sort of give you an indicator where's the stop for this.
Oh,
now that buttonhole that you've done there, and if you've sewn it partway through, may not be the correct size when you finish it.
Okay, so it's important to remember to drop the stop. All of these steps are in your manual, by the way.
So now what's that one step that I sometimes forget? That's why it's important to do a practice buttonhole.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
All right, what's next?
So all I do is I then have to line up my fabric on it. I put up the thing and try and slide this fabric between the two pieces.
Okay, when you raised your presser foot, it opened up those two pieces.
Right.
Okay.
So now I just have to slide this fabric between the bottom plate and the buttonholer.
Okay.
Okay, now you got to make sure that you do that, because some people make a mistake and they slide it underneath the stabilizer plate, and you don't want to do that.
So it's so basically you've opened it up, you have a plate on the bottom, then your fabric, then your plate on the top.
Right. And now you line it up. So I had that little crosshatch there, right? And I've got the line, right? So I line it up approximately there. Okay. I'm usually not that careful. The line in that is just a guide for me to make sure I've got it in the right spot, right? And I try and make my fabric straight. And you can do that by the line going off to the other end and seeing there's a little bump here. You can see where the line's going, and so it's fairly straight. So the buttonhole will sew straight.
Okay. Next.
And then all I do is press on the gas, and
But you dropped your presser foot, right?
yeah, you have to drop your presser foot to get it down, just like you would with a regular sewing. Here, I've got it up here, I drop it down.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. And that's in place. Then I just press on the gas and let it go.
Okay.
Okay.
Let it go. So if we get in here as tight as keep going. So you have to keep your foot on the pedal
Right.
all the time. So you can see now what it's doing. It's doing the satin stitch all the way around that piece. Now if you want to make those satin stitches a little closer together, you're using it on the default, right?
Yeah, I am.
Now it automatically ties it off when it
Yep.
comes to the end.
And
okay.
I cut my thread.
and it cut your thread. So now what?
So now you can take it out and have a look at what it did. You notice that it's not exactly in the middle that I did. Maybe I should have shoved it over a little bit, but it's approximately where I want it to be.
Okay, now that I see a loose thread there, I would assume you would carefully cut that off without cutting your satin stitches. Is there a reason why you're using applique scissors for that?
Nope.
Nope, so you use whatever. All right, now here's my question. So yeah, you got this nice little box, but how do you get a button in it?
Well, do I have my thing here?
He's looking for his seam ripper.
Yes, I am looking for my seam ripper.
Okay, so Walter found his seam ripper. So
there's different ways you can cut it open, but I always use seam ripper. What I usually do is I stick it to the end of the where the satin stitch is.
But you're not sticking it through the satin stitches.
No, I'm sticking it through the cloth that's in between.
Okay.
Okay, so in the where the hole is, right, and just stick it through, and I rip through the fabric, but I don't go all the way to the end.
Okay.
And then what I do is I go to about halfway, and then I turn it around and do the same thing.
And the reason you do that is?
So that you don't end up accidentally ripping through the satin stitches at the end.
Okay, I learned a technique where you take a straight pin and pin it through the top edge of your satin stitch where you want to stop cutting the buttonhole. And then you go ahead, and if you come up to that, the needle will stop you from going beyond into the...
Okay, well, yeah, that's a thing that you could do. The only thing I'd worry about that is dulling your if you kept hitting the pin all the time, dulling your thing. This way, it just makes sure it doesn't go too far.
Okay.
Okay, and now you're going to have a lot of loose threads here. You may want to trim these out, these loose threads out with the scissors or whatever, or you can just leave them. They eventually wear out. So.
But I don't think that's very professional. I think you
No. Yeah, well, you can if you do. Actually, I don't usually bother too much. They eventually go away on their own.
Go away.
But because they're stitched all the way around, that's your buttonhole.
And there it is.
That's it.
And
that's all there is to it.
So
you just keep making buttonholes all the way down the row, and then that's what you have the front of your shirt. Now, like I said, on men's shirts they're usually spaced 3.5 inches apart. So I just go 3.5 inches from the first one to the next one.
And down the row you go. Okay, so let me think if there's anything that we can anticipate that people will ask.
Make sure you have a full bobbin when you do this, because you don't want to
end
up running out of bobbin in the middle of one of these, because then you'll have to pick it out. And as you can see, they are pretty difficult to pick out.
And not only that, but if you ran out of bobbin thread and you're going to have to put another bobbin in, you have to remove that whole device that's on here
off the top if it's a top-loading bobbin.
Yeah, but that doesn't matter. It's not like you have, if it's top-loading bobbin, you just do as you normally do. In the middle of this, it's just each buttonhole is a separate project, if you want to look at it.
Oh, okay. I see what you mean.
You don't ruin the project by taking this whole thing
I just thought if you had it like you're halfway through a buttonhole, you run out of bobbin thread. If you remove that from there, you're going to set your
if you're right through, if it happens halfway through,
yeah,
you're screwed.
Okay, so make sure you've got lots of bobbin thread.
Now I
don't play bobbin chicken.
Had a button. Sometimes, on occasion, the machine might screw up. If it hits a snag in your fabric or something and pulls it, it may throw the machine off for stitching it. And that can occur. I have had it where it's done almost the entire buttonhole and a little piece at the end is missing. And I have fudged it by setting up my own stitch and going over it. Anything you could do to try not to rip out a buttonhole is much better than trying to rip one out.
So
because if you want to
prepared.
rip one out, It is very
If you want to
difficult.
rip one out, okay.
It is very difficult.
So I guess what's to be taken from this is buttonholes are not difficult, but there is setup. You should practice first to make sure everything's running fine. Make sure you have a bobbin that's got lots and lots of thread on it, and let the machine do its thing.
Right.
With it.
Also, don't try and hold the fabric while it's trying to stitch, and that kind of keep your hands off of it.
Just keep your foot on the pedal and
Just keep your foot on the pedal. Line it up as best as you can, and try not to guide the fabric, because that may cause the machine to give you an imperfect buttonhole.
Okay, good to know that too. Okay, so that's how you do a buttonhole on a modern machine with your buttonhole attachment. As I mentioned before, you should refer to your manual, especially if you're not doing them on a regular basis. It's always good to review and look at things step by step. The Janome manual is pretty good about this when it comes to the buttonholes, because I've used it because I don't make buttonholes very often, like never at all. But I have done it, and I check the manual. So
it's a little scary at first, the first time you do it, but I, even as many shirts as I've done, I always do a practice few buttonholes first, just to make sure that I've got everything set up the way I want it to be set up.
Okay.
And it'll save you some heartache if you do that.
Now, another question I can anticipate someone's going to ask is, first of all, on the demonstration, you were using quilting cotton, right?
Yes, I did.
What if you used a jersey? Is there something you'd have to be aware of?
Yeah, see, I think then you start getting into construction of jersey shirts. Jersey shirts, usually you need a stabilizer in behind your button band to make sure that your jersey won't stretch.
So basically beware. That's definitely a practice. You're going to have to play with more settings. If you're just using regular cotton, you're okay. And probably,
if you're using a stretchy fabric, you're going to need to have a stabilizer.
Yeah.
There are stabilizers that you can get that are iron on or stick on stabilizers that will wash off in the wash. That will stabilize your buttonhole.
Okay, but that's a whole conversation for another day.
Yeah, I know. So you're getting into something that's a little more.
That's a little bit more involved. So consult YouTube for those kind of things. Okay, great. So that's how you do a buttonhole. So hope you got something out of that. And if you have any questions that things you don't think we covered or whatever in that particular, remember we were doing a pretty much a standard buttonhole. When I say we, I mean Walter. We weren't getting into anything too terribly fancy. Start with the basics and build on the basics. But if you have questions, you can put them in the comments below, and we'll do our best to answer them in one way or another, either directly to you or as a comment, or you might save up some of them and do them on another edition of, or episode's a better word, episode of So Chatty. Okay, so the new series I've already mentioned, we'll be talking about sergers and cover stitch machines. Walter will be telling you more about them than I will be, because I use mine in a very limited way. But I have a couple of things I'm going to show you as well, from a quilter and machine embroiderer's point of view, how you can incorporate certain features of your serger for projects that come from those sources.
Well, I use mine pretty standard, and you have actually used some features that I don't usually use.
Yeah, so between the two of us, you're going to get, well, I think a fairly complete outline of how to use a serger. And right now, sergers are becoming very popular. There's a lot of people are afraid of sergers, want to get a serger, don't know what to buy as a serger. There's the whole business of threading sergers, although the modern machines now, with or without the air threading capacity, are much easier.
Yeah, but even if you don't have an air threader, if it's a modern serger, usually they've got they've made it easier for you to thread it.
Yeah, but those are kind of things we're going to talk about before Walter goes on and explains everything about the sergers right now, and we don't do a series anymore because he's told you everything. Yeah, he's like that. Okay, so that's coming up. Let's see. Comments from the past week. Let's talk about asking questions since I already mentioned we don't have a problem with you asking us questions. But some people ask a question, we give them an answer, but they don't want that answer. They have already figured out what the answers they're looking for, and all they're looking for, in our opinion, is for someone to confirm that they are right or make a decision for them. And that really frustrates us. Because why ask the question? If you're asking us a question and we're taking the time to answer it, don't turn around and throw it in our face and say, well, that's not the way I do it. Well, then why'd you ask the question?
That's not the answer I wanted.
Yeah, that's not the answer I want. Like, I'll give you an example of it. These people, because I belong to a Facebook group for the 550E Janome embroidery machine, and you've heard me talk about and bitch about rope bowls and embroidering the bottom of a rope bowl, or even quilting on, like doing a full-size quilt on an embroidery machine as if it was a long arm. And you know my feelings about both of those. Don't do it. You're asking for trouble. But nevertheless, people will, that's not the answer they want to hear. And so other people are very willing to give them the answer they want. And then their machines bust. And then they come back and they complain. Well, I was told you could do this. Everybody was doing it. I don't know what went wrong. It's not my fault. Yeah, it is your fault. You're trying to make a machine do something it can't do.
Well, there's other people say that, oh, well, I bought this machine and I was told that I can do anything with it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, no. Well, no, either that's selective hearing. That's what you wanted to hear and you heard that, right? Because I can't believe that anybody selling a machine is going to tell you it's going to be able to do things that you want to do that it can't do.
Not so. Janome dealers are telling people that on the M17 embroidery machine, their big deluxe model, that you can quilt a quilt on it. But what they're doing is they're omitting some of the precautionary tails that need to go with that as well. Because some Janome dealers, they're the ones that sort of like your used car salesmen, okay? And they exist in the sewing world. The ones who are good dealers, if you ask that question, they're going to tell you, well, it might work. However, this, and that might happen. Okay, so in other words, buyer beware. You're taking a risk on it.
Like, I mean, if you're buying one of those machines and you just want to quilt on like a small item,
a placemat, a table runner, a baby quilt,
yeah, you might be fine.
Yeah.
But when you're starting to look at doing queen size or king size quilt, I think you'll just end up being frustrated.
Now, there are people out there who will claim that they have done a full-size quilt, quilted it all on an embroidery machine. Well, I say, if that's true, bully for you. You didn't get caught this time with it, but it will happen.
Well, it's also going to be extremely time consuming.
Yeah, and the other thing too is, show me the video. Show me the video. I want to see a quilt, a queen size quilt done on an embroidery machine, quilted from beginning to end. I want to see a video of that. To date, I have never found a video that does that.
They just show you samples.
They show you a little sample.
Small pieces.
Yeah. So, yeah. But what we're saying, we're getting a little off topic here. The point is about questioning. Questions are good. That's how we learn things. But if you are asking the question, but there's only one answer you want, then don't ask the question, just do your own thing. Because I think the people who do that kind of thing and don't like the answers they get because it's not the one they want, they're looking for a scapegoat. So when they go ahead and do it anyways, then they're going to come back and say, that didn't work, it busted my machine, or whatever with it. You make the decision, you live with the consequences. Hopefully they come out all right, but if they don't, you have only yourself to blame. So, yeah, and there's quite a few people on YouTube, on the internet, that those are the kind of questions we deal with on a regular basis. So, you take your chances. Okay, so another thing here that this brought up, and this, okay, I belong to the Janome 550E embroidery group. This is a pit of stupidity because there's a bunch of people on
That's a Facebook group.
That's a Facebook group. There's a bunch of people on there who are the ones I've just mentioned. They are looking for a particular answer. They ask a question, but they argue back and forth. That no. Well, they can. Well, then why are you asking for advice? And of course, they're trying to do things with their machines that their machines aren't meant to do. And they're putting feet on their machine or trying to jerry-rig a foot on the machine to do certain applications the machine's not designed for. And sometimes they have success, but they're cheating. They're just prolonging the inevitable. There will be a problem, and it probably a very costly problem. But there's this one lady, and you've got to laugh. You have to laugh. And I know some of you are going to say, well, you're just being cruel. Yes, I am, because this is the epitome of stupidity for several reasons, and I make no excuses for it. She has a picture of her, she's got the end of her embroidery machine, of her sewing machine opened up. She took it off. That is one part that the only time you need to take that off is if you're going to do deep cleaning, okay?
Or oiling.
Or oil, yeah.
For the embroidery machine.
Yeah, well, was it? Yeah, it was
an embroidery machine. It was a 550.
Yeah, 550, that's right. And anyways, she was having trouble with it. She was trying to thread it. She was reading her manual. She didn't read it well, where it said make sure that your, what do you call the arm? The release, what do they call that?
There's a name for it, and I can't remember.
Now I'm having a blank.
It's the hook arm that
comes up and down.
Goes up and down with your
needle,
thread in it.
Your thread goes down. It goes down to the needle, comes back up. Oh, I know what it's called.
Take up lever.
Take up lever. That's it. It should be in the furthest up position. And when it's in the furthest up position, so is your needle. Okay? Because the two are attached. And, well, she couldn't get that to come up at the top. No matter what she did, that arm would not go up to the top. So she figured there was something broken in her machine. So she takes off the end of it to look inside. And yes, indeed, the release arm, it's there. It's down. She didn't read the instruction. It said to move the arm up.
It didn't say anything about the arm. It said the first three instructions of how to thread your machine was to push or press her foot up, right? So that the
lever at the back.
The foot is up higher, right? And the second one is to lock out your machine.
Yes, so you don't get your little fingers in there.
And then the third thing was to turn the flywheel toward yourself till the needle went up to the highest position.
Which is this arm will come up at the same time.
Yeah, when your needle goes up to the highest position, so will the arm come up to that side.
She didn't know that. She missed that step. She didn't know what a flywheel was. Okay, now you're going to say, well, you're just cruel, calling her stupid. She's stupid because, one, she didn't read her manual properly.
She said she was reading her manual and she was following all the steps that she had to do to thread the machine. Well, she missed the first three.
Yeah, so she obviously was not reading her manual correctly. She was jumping ahead in that. 2, has she never owned a sewing machine before? Not an embroidery machine, a sewing machine, because all sewing machines have flywheels and they all work the same way for the same purpose. So now maybe she's never sewn before. Maybe. Okay, let's give her the benefit of the doubt, okay? She's never sewn before, but she wanted to embroider. She got an embroidery machine. Well, there's a diagram in the front of your manual on all sewing machines, on all embroidery machines, that lists all the parts. Has a little diagram, little arrows, and a little legend that tells you this is this, and that. So even if she had never in her life had heard the term flywheel, but she read it in the manual, she'd be able to locate it very easily on there. To jump right to the conclusion that there is something horribly wrong with my machine and I'm going to take it apart. Well, first of all, she obviously is not a trained technician on sewing machines from fixing them. Because if she was, she'd know what a flywheel was.
Well, not only that, where did she get this machine? Like, would you, if you bought it from a dealer, which I have a feeling she didn't, she probably bought it
Secondhand.
secondhand or online or something like that. Um, you would go back to your dealer and say, oh, I don't know, I'm having a hard time threading this. Can you show me how to do it? Right?
Yeah. Like, what am I doing wrong? You don't immediately try. And that must have been quite a feat in itself for her to actually get that part of the cover off. You know, because if you don't know where the flywheel is or what a flywheel is, how do you know how to get that cover off? There is
There is a trick
instructions,
to it.
but there's a trick to get it. Like, how did she do that? I don't understand. And other people were saying the same to her, like, why would you take it apart? You have to, the flywheel. And some were describing, going, on the right hand side of your machine, there's this thing that looks like a wheel. That's the flywheel. Just turn it about a quarter turn or so towards you, and that will raise your needle up and your arm up. And then you can thread your machine.
And not only that, even with the threading of the machine, if you do like most normal sewing, modern sewing machines, you don't actually stick your thread through the eye of the take-up lever anymore. You just wrap it around
Yeah.
and slide it in the back, right? So
There's so many things wrong. And okay, those of you that are of a kinder heart than I am are going to say, well, the poor dear probably never used one before, so you have to be patient with her. No, I don't. The reason I say it's stupid is when in doubt, check your manual.
not only that, does she not know anybody else that has a sewing machine that you can ask?
Like, really, I mean, it boggles the mind. It really does. And people were telling her what to do, and she was rejecting the answers. As far as she was concerned, that machine was broken. And there wasn't any answer anybody could give her that she was going to agree to. So this tells you the mentality here. She is not embroidery machine worthy.
Well, I mean, that just brings up that one story I told you a long time ago from the place that we usually go to for sewing equipment, is that some lady had purchased a machine from this sewing place that we went to, and they showed her how to use it and showed her how to thread it. And then she would come back and say, my machine's not working properly. And then they would notice that she had threaded it completely wrong. So then they would go back and show her again how to thread it. And again, she'd go away. And then about, a few days later, she'd show up again and say, well, it's still not working properly. And again, she's threaded it wrong. And this happened several times in a row, to the point where they said, look, you can't bring it back here anymore.
Well, they even made her thread the machine in front of them and immediately saw that she was doing it wrong, and so pointed this out to her and showed her how to correct it. See, she didn't listen. That wasn't the answer she wanted. She had some other hidden agenda, I think, in her mind, where she wasn't happy with the machine, wanted a different one or something. I don't know. I have no idea. But I mean, there's only one word for that, and I'm sorry, but the word is stupid. Okay? Send me hate mail if you want, I'll ignore it. So, right, but that's what I'm saying. So, yes, we don't mind answering questions. Okay? But if you're going to ask us a question, if you're asking us for our opinion or advice, be prepared to get our opinion and our advice based upon our experience. Are we going to say that we are absolutely know everything there is to know about these things? No. So you may have to take what we tell you with a word of caution, but we would certainly not purposely steer you down the wrong path. Okay? We tell you what works for us. You are then perfectly free to choose where you want to go. Choose your own adventure, as they say at that. But to waste our time by asking us a question where you already know it won't matter what we say, you're not going to accept that, then why bother? It's a waste of your time. It's a waste of our time. It's a waste of oxygen. Okay, off the soapbox for now. All right, so useful links in the show notes below for everything that we've talked about today. And yeah, I think that's it. Any parting words?
No.
Nothing?
Have a good weekend.
Yep. Have a good weekend. We'll see you next week. Bye for now.
Bye.